Every man and woman walks this earth sending out invisible signals. These signals are not magical. They are mechanical, psychological, and emotional patterns repeated over time. But the masses walk blindly through life, never learning to see beyond the surface. If you want to rise above the crowd, you must stop looking at people and start reading them. Reading people instantly begins with the discipline of absolute observation. Train yourself to notice everything. Not in a paranoid way, but in a purposeful way. When someone speaks, don't just listen to their words. Watch where their eyes travel. Do they break eye contact when they speak of certain subjects? That is not shyness. It is discomfort. It is the body resisting a truth. That's your first clue. Observation is not simply seeing. It is seeing with intent. The way someone sits, the speed at which they talk, how often they touch their face or clear their throat. Each one is a word in their hidden language. You must also understand that the face is the theater of emotion, and micro-expressions are the fleeting actors. Most people miss them. But when someone flashes a quick frown after a compliment, or flares their nostrils when asked a question, it is because their real feelings are attempting to escape. That escape may only last a fraction of a second, but to the trained eye, it is enough. You see, people are trying to conceal themselves, but their biology betrays them. Once you understand that, you can read anyone like a paragraph, and in some cases, like a headline. And remember this, people lie with words, but they leak truth with behavior. When someone tells you they're fine but gives a half smile and a quick shoulder shrug, believe the body, not the words. When a person avoids direct answers, shifts blame, or fills the air with empty phrases like "to be honest," or "I'm just saying," they are distracting you from something. And that something is always worth paying attention to. But the most important key to reading anyone instantly is not in the face or gestures. It is in the motivation. Behind every behavior is a reason. People don't talk for no reason. They don't fidget without cause. If someone is overly nice, they want approval. If someone dominates the room with volume and bravado, they want control. And if someone is too quiet, too cautious, too agreeable, it often stems from fear. Once you learn to look not for what people do, but for why they do it, you no longer need to guess. You will know. To read someone is not to judge them. It is to understand them. And once you understand someone, you gain leverage. Not to manipulate, but to connect, to influence, and to lead. And in every room you walk into, whether it be a boardroom, a courtroom, or a quiet conversation, you must seek not just to speak, but to read. For the one who understands people holds the power to shape their world. You want success, master people. You want power, master observation. You want truth, listen beyond the words. Because the moment you begin reading people not with your eyes, but with your trained awareness, you will stop being surprised by the world and start directing it. The moment you walk into a room, your mind should stop being passive. Most people enter a space and wait to be told what to notice. But those who understand the art of reading people activate their senses immediately. Observation becomes a mission, not a background process. You start noticing who avoids eye contact, who scans the room, who adjusts their clothing every few seconds, who plants their feet firmly as if trying to dominate the space. These aren't random behaviors. They're tells, like in poker. And just like a poker player reads hands, you read people. You don't need to be a genius. You need to be deliberate. The human mind is wired to ignore patterns it deems unimportant. But once you tell your mind what matters, it will begin to pick up signals faster. Begin with body language. If someone has their arms crossed, it isn't always defensiveness, but it is something. It could be discomfort, insecurity, or even subconscious resistance. Pair that with their facial tension, their foot direction, and whether they lean forward or backward, and suddenly, what seemed like a close, doff pose becomes a full emotional equation. Observation is not guessing, it's measuring. Silence is often where the real information is. When you ask someone a question and they pause too long or answer too quickly, they are revealing their intent. A long pause can signal hesitation or calculation. A quick, mechanical answer may come from a rehearsed defense. The tone they use matters. Is it calm or defensive? Warm or clipped? Does it rise at the end like a question, signaling doubt? These tiny variations, when stacked together, start to paint the emotional canvas of the person in front of you. Start observing the eyes. The eyes are not just windows to the soul, they are dashboards of thought. When someone is recalling a memory, their eyes will often shift upward. When someone is constructing a lie, their gaze may dart sideways or downward. If someone's pupils dilate when talking to you, there's emotional stimulation, excitement, fear, or interest. If their blink rate increases, there is internal stress. Combine this with their breathing rate, shallow or deep, steady or uneven, and you are building a real-time psychological profile. Gestures betray nerves. Fidgeting, tapping, rubbing the back of the neck, adjusting a collar, all signs of discomfort. But context is king. If they were calm minutes ago and these behaviors begin suddenly, it means you said something that hit a nerve. This is why observation is not just about the other person. It's also about how they react to you. Their behavior is a response to a stimulus, and if you're the one providing that stimulus, you control the experiment. When you master observation, you no longer walk into interactions blind. You begin to predict reactions before they happen. In a negotiation, for instance, when someone clenches their jaw after a proposal, but tries to maintain a smile, you already know they're suppressing disagreement. You can pivot when a friend shrugs and says they're fine, but their shoulders droop and voice cracks, you know they're not. You can respond with empathy instead of dismissal. That is emotional intelligence born from trained observation. Most people think reading people is about intuition. Intuition helps, but it's not enough. Intuition becomes powerful when it's built on disciplined awareness. If you keep a journal of behavioral patterns, if you reflect on how people responded to your tone, your words, your silences, you begin to sharpen your awareness. Like sharpening a knife, it gets easier to cut through surface behaviors and see what lies beneath. Tie this to influence. The moment you read someone's state, you can adjust yours accordingly. If someone is anxious, don't overpower them with confidence. Match their energy first, then lead it. If someone is overly dominant, meet their assertiveness with calm certainty, not submission or aggression. This mirroring and redirecting only works when your observation is active. People trust those who understand them, and people feel understood not through words, but through presence and response. Observation must become instinctual, but it begins as a discipline. The sharper your eyes become, the less you'll be manipulated, the more you'll be respected, and the faster you'll climb in influence. Because in the end, people aren't mysteries, they're patterns, and patterns can be read, understood, and leveraged. This is how you begin to read anyone, by seeing not with eyes alone, but with trained awareness sharpened through purpose. What you observe on the surface is only the first layer. The second layer lies in what people try to conceal. After training your awareness to see behaviors, patterns, and physical cues, you begin to realize that the truth rarely comes out through words. People are conditioned to say what's acceptable, polite, or expected. But their nervous systems are less disciplined. The unconscious slips through when they don't have time to filter, or when the emotional pressure is too strong to contain. That's why silence, hesitation, and deflection reveal more than polished explanations ever will. When someone tells you a story and avoids eye contact only during one part of it, that moment matters. It may be where the lie hides. When someone nods while saying no, or shakes their head while saying yes, their body is disagreeing with their mouth. It's not a glitch. It's a conflict between their conscious message and subconscious truth. The body often tells on the mouth, and once your eye has been trained in observation, you'll begin to catch those contradictions in real time. Even tone holds emotional leaks. A person may speak in a friendly pitch, but if their pace quickens and their throat tightens, they're likely anxious. If someone uses heavy breathing mid-sentence but continues smiling, they're not relaxed. They're pushing through stress. You're not listening just to content anymore. You're listening for emotional weight. That weight is carried in rhythm, not grammar. Learn to listen not for the logic of a sentence, but for the emotional velocity behind it. A powerful technique is to ask questions you already know the answer to, not to test their honesty, but to study how they tell it. Do they pause when they shouldn't? Do they over-explain a simple point? Do they smile nervously while insisting they're calm? Each of these is a crack in the mask. People are most genuine when they don't know they're being analyzed. That's where you must stay sharp, not with suspicion, but with attention. In social settings, people default to performance, but that performance wears thin during unguarded moments, when they think you're not watching, when someone else is talking, and their expression slips. That's when irritation, envy, boredom, or judgment flickers across their face. You must be present enough to catch those micro-emotions. One flicker of the eyes when a name is mentioned, one twitch of the lip when a compliment is given to someone else. These flashes are not trivial. They're pure. They haven't yet been censored by the ego, and those moments are where the real personality leaks out. Even silence speaks volumes. Silence after a question is never empty. It's filled with hesitation, calculation, fear, or confusion. If someone goes silent right after hearing a name, it's not just forgetfulness. It's reflection or resistance. If someone takes a deep breath before responding, it could mean they're building courage or managing anger. Silence is never passive. It is either a defense or a preparation, and the longer the silence, the heavier the truth being held back. Behavior under stress is especially revealing. People are good at maintaining a polished exterior when things are calm. But pressure strips away performance. That's when real values, beliefs, and priorities rise to the surface. Observe someone in a moment of rejection, anger, embarrassment, or fear. What do they say? How do they move? Where do their eyes go? That's not them performing anymore. That's the authentic version stepping out, even if briefly, and your job is to remember that version. Even humor can be a disguise. People often hide pain, resentment, or insecurity behind jokes. When someone repeatedly jokes about being unlovable or dumb or always failing, they're not always trying to be funny. They're disarming you. They're rehearsing the story they believe about themselves in a way that's socially acceptable. But the frequency and intensity of those jokes often reflect the depth of the wound. Listen to what they laugh about too often. That's not comedy, it's coded confession. And don't ignore the energy between words. Sometimes the loudest truth is in what someone avoids. If someone changes the subject when a name is mentioned, downplays achievements, or steers every conversation away from their personal life, they are not being private. They are protecting something. What someone avoids discussing is as important as what they speak about passionately. These absences are not empty spaces. They are emotional minefields. After you've mastered the skill of observation and committed to decoding the subtle leaks of emotion, you no longer interact blindly. You begin to understand what drives people, what they hide, what they fear, what they crave, and that understanding gives you the upper hand not in domination, but in clarity. Because once you've seen the cracks in a mask, it becomes impossible to unsee the person behind it. Every behavior is rooted in motive. After you've trained your observation and learned to interpret emotional leakage, the next level is uncovering why people act the way they do. This is where you stop reacting to people and begin understanding them. Because beneath every gesture, every silence, every word choice lies an internal driver. These drivers are rarely logical. They are emotional and often unconscious. Once you can read a person's motive, their behavior becomes predictable. You're not just observing the what anymore. You're decoding the why. People operate on a core emotional currency. For some, it's validation. For others, it's power. Some people want safety. Some want admiration. Some want revenge without ever saying the word. If you observe patterns of speech and behavior, the underlying need becomes clear. When someone constantly brings conversations back to themselves, what they want isn't attention, it's significance. They are trying to prove their worth without directly asking for affirmation. That's a motive. When someone pretends they don't care, but their eyes track everyone's reaction in the room, they care deeply. Their motive is approval, masked by detachment. Insecurity is one of the most common invisible drivers. People who dominate conversations are not always confident. They're often terrified of being irrelevant. People who gossip aren't just bored. They're hungry for status. Those who brag relentlessly aren't full of pride. They're starved of acknowledgement. These aren't random behaviors. They're defense mechanisms built to protect fragile identities. And once you see that, you stop judging them and start understanding how to interact with them. You must learn to listen beyond what is said. People often communicate in projections. When someone accuses others of being fake, they may be hiding their own lack of authenticity. When someone assumes everyone is out to get them, they may be carrying guilt or unresolved pain. Projection is the window into unhealed emotions. When you hear repeated phrases like, "I don't trust anyone," or "everyone's just using each other," you're not hearing insight, you're hearing a wound speaking. The key to reading motive is repetition. What someone says once might be casual, but what they repeat, emphasize, or emotionally charge, that is where their motive lies. A man who constantly brings up success isn't talking about money. He's telling you what he fears being without. A woman who constantly talks about loyalty may have been betrayed deeply. Motive reveals itself in patterns of emotional emphasis. Where people place emotional energy, there lies the trigger, and behind the trigger lies the need. In high-stakes situations, business negotiations, relationships, confrontations, this awareness becomes your power. You begin to tailor your responses based on motive rather than surface behavior. If you know someone's motive is control, you don't challenge them directly. You offer choices that give them the illusion of control. If someone's motive is fear of abandonment, you don't pull back when they get anxious. You offer reassurance until the panic settles. This is how influence works, by speaking directly to the motive beneath the mask. People often claim to be rational, but they live by emotion. They make decisions to satisfy emotions, then use logic to justify those decisions afterward. That is human nature. Understanding this removes the confusion from their choices. A friend who suddenly cuts ties didn't act without reason. They acted on an emotion you didn't see. A client who chooses a less qualified partner did it not for the better service, but for the emotional safety they felt in the interaction. Learn to trace back decisions to the emotional root, and you will never again be surprised by human behavior. Even manipulation follows motive. When someone flatters you excessively, ask yourself, what do they want? If someone plays the victim in every story, what benefit do they gain from being powerless? When someone tries to provoke jealousy or insecurity, what internal emptiness are they covering? Manipulation isn't always evil. It's often just desperation in disguise. But to deal with it effectively, you must understand its purpose. Once you name the motive, the manipulation loses its power over you. Once motive becomes clear, communication changes. You stop taking things personally. You stop getting triggered by people's reactions. You start speaking to what matters most to them. That's how you gain influence, by aligning your message with their unmet needs. If someone needs respect, give them a platform. If someone needs connection, offer presence. If someone needs clarity, provide structure. Influence isn't domination, it's alignment, and alignment is only possible when motive is understood. At this level of awareness, your ability to read people becomes a form of quiet control. You no longer just understand who people are. You understand what they want, what they fear, and how they're likely to act. You hold the map to their internal world, and most of them don't even know that map exists. But you do, because you've trained your eye, tuned your ear, and sharpened your mind to read what most ignore. The external behavior was the first signal, the emotional leakage was the second, but motive. That's the blueprint, and once you hold the blueprint, you are no longer guessing. You are leading.